Hi, welcome to Ketobiography. I'm your host, Robyn Dobbins. For more than 2 years, our next guest has embraced the ketogenic lifestyle, not just as a way of eating, but as a cornerstone of healing. In the fall of 2023, after facing an unsettling diagnosis, he refused to accept a textbook fate. Instead, he pursued a powerful blend of functional healing and modern medicine, believing that what he fed his body could reshape his future. Today, his resolve is unwavering, and his story is a testament to the body's potential when fueled with purpose. Please welcome Klay Swatloski to Ketobiography. Hello, Klay.
Hi,
Welcome.
hi, Robyn. No, gosh, your introductions always make someone just sound so amazing. I hope I can live up to that. So
Yes, please live up to the standard that I just set for you. It's very important.
wonderful.
So I'm so glad you're here. So you were introduced to me by my previous guest, Dori Martin, and
Yeah.
she has just been so wonderful at just sharing other people's stories with me because my whole mission is to just get stories out there. Somebody needs to hear what you have to say, and I'm trying to give a voice to that. So the other thing is that I just want to turn it over. I want to hear it the
Wonderful.
way you want to tell it. So I'm just gonna disappear for a little while and let you do your thing. I'll be
Well,
back later if you let me. You can have the whole time if you want. It's fine.
sounds good. Well, Robyn, that is something that I will say is the one of the first times I get to really share this story publicly. Of course, in conversations with people, I'm very open and very candid in my experience of what I've gone through. But at the same time, I love the idea of just giving hope to more people and finding them, ways to go about achieving what they hope to out of whatever their journey may be. So I'll just start with my story and kind of, set it up to where I came, what was 2 years ago, and from to where I am now. And actually it's a little over 2 years than that. But summer of 2023 is kind of, where I'd like to start. And I work an amazing job. I haven't worked for an amazing organization that's kind of allowed me to just do things beyond just my normal job. And I can remember I was so proud. It was the first year we had created this charity event that the company allowed us to, utilize labor from the company to set it up. And I was so proud of it. And the day of, the organization went flawlessly. We raised beyond money that I didn't even expect to raise, and was able to give this money to some great charities. But what I started to notice was that in all of that, what amazingness it should feel, I felt nothing. I really kind of was realizing that I was so stressed out. I was so in a place where, brain fog was something I didn't realize was something, but it really was starting to notice to me that, and everyone around me is, congratulating me and hugging me and all of these things. And I remember, getting home that weekend after that and saying to my wife, who was there with me the whole time, and that I'm like, I should feel such joy. I should feel such like exuberance in my body of what I've accomplished, because this was truly a goal of mine. And, it kind of settled into that, maybe I'm feeling a little burned out from work. I'm not sure what the situation was, but a couple months, go on. And then I'm starting to notice a few other things with my body, my left side, especially. Coordination was off. I would, go to lean against a door frame of one of our colleagues, and I'd lean up against it and I'd miss it. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. How, what's going on here? I tried to blame it on my shoes being too tight. Like the weirdest things that you're just, who knows where it's coming from. But I continued to see a little bit more weakness on my left side. I even, was backing out of a parking space and hit a parked car that I just, in my mind, there was no reason I should have. Like I turned at the depth perception I should have, and, kind of just kept going. And as I'm doing these things, things are starting to be picked up by people around me. Like, something just seems a little off, but I'm like, I don't know. It's gonna just kind of blow it off again. And it's leading up to that. So what it kind of culminated to was there was a weekend where my wife was actually going to a baby shower for my sister, who had just adopted a daughter, and we were all so excited. And of course they were preparing, everything for this. And she had asked me to help her wrap some flowers with brown paper, just to kind of, keep it together. And I'm typically a creative person when I can just do that and it just flows and does it. And I stared at it and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this right now. Like, I can't get it to work. She went off to the baby shower, figured that out. And later that night I had grilled chicken and brought it in, and I was going to cut it for our family for dinner. And I went to cut it and I didn't know what to do with my left hand. I literally stared at it and I couldn't control it. And so I looked at her and she kind of looked at me, knowing something was wrong. And, of course we have 3 wonderful young girls at this time that, we didn't want to alarm them to anything. So we finished through dinner, we got them to bed, and then called my parents to come down so that she could take me in just because something wasn't wrong. Went into the emergency room. They did, did a CT scan, and then an MRI later on to find out that I did have a mass on the right side of my brain, which ended up, then they transferred me over to a different hospital in our area that was more equipped to prepare for me for brain surgery, which within 3 days of me having found this or went into the ER, I was having a craniotomy to remove what was around a golf ball size mass that was on the right side of my brain. Of course, at that time, I didn't know much. The word cancer had been thrown around already just because, what they can see from imaging and make projections of these things is one thing. But I was still just maybe in a little bit of a belief that it was just a mass, whatever a mass meant, but it was just a mass that would be on my brain, and they'd get it out and I'd go on with my day, because that's just where we were. But went through the surgery. The surgeon did an amazing job. And then, shortly after, started to get doctors in the room to announce with my prognosis. And they did discover in the end that I had glioblastoma stage 4. And of course, some doctors' bedside manners are a little bit better than others, but my doctor was very straight shooting on his prognosis, and was, I never, when he defined a number on my life, I was like, how can you do that? Like, it really just it just hit me. Like, I don't think that's possible. And then right then and there, I almost can say from that moment on, I actually never believed that I had this. Like, I never believed it was something that truly would affect or shape my life in a way that they could, define it as ending. And so, I stepped back, got home, tried to settle back into our family life. Of course, that the medical side of things, wanting to quickly set up as fast as possible the ways to go about treating this, or taking me into the next realm of modern medicine, and doing that. But I did luckily get to step back and kind of really try to start assembling my, as I call it now, my fantasy team, because I wanted the right people around me to help me through this. I knew my attitude was going to be great. Again, there was sadness, there was scared. I was scared, things like that at one time, but in general things, in general stance of time, I just felt good yet. Like, I knew that this wasn't it. This wasn't what was going to define me. This wasn't, what was really going to control my life. So luckily I was part of this local business group that was connected to a worldwide network of doctors. So I used the health concierge through them to reconnect to a different doctor. I got connected with one of the top glioblastoma doctors in the country, from my understanding, and that was at Duke in North Carolina. And so, we got on the phone pretty much instantly with him, and he said one thing to me that I will never forget. Is he asked me how old I wanted to live till. And I of course said 84, because that's how old my grandpa lived till. And that just sounded like the right thing. He lived an amazing life. I envied him. So I just said 84, and he goes, and his response was, why not longer? And I'm like, okay, now we have totally changed the course of what my thought process is on life right now. And I'm like, this is who I want on my team. I didn't even honestly at that point probably care what his medical expertise was and things like that. It was just the way that he was going to approach me in his care that I was all about it. So got down, different scans, all kinds of things happening in between there. But we got to North Carolina and decided I was going to do the 6 weeks of radiation and oral chemo down there. So packed up the whole family, wife homeschools our kids, which is absolutely amazing. And we were able to just take the whole family and live in North Carolina for, it was about 8 weeks total that we were down there to go through this treatment. All while I'm going through this, I have to say that we as a family have lived a clean, what we'd call a clean lifestyle, probably for, I don't know, 5 to 8 years before that. It really, my wife specifically has taken a really great interest in making sure that we live a non-toxic living between our cleaning supplies, all of the organic foods and grass-fed foods that, you know, we're fueling our bodies, and just the way that we surround ourselves with any sort of chemical in our home. So of course, this all happening, of course, made, you know, people question her antics that, you know, when we live in a world of Midwest where everything's deep fried and, you know, whatnot, it was, you know, we were living a different lifestyle already, but now look what's happening here. And, you know, but I'm at the same time, I'm like, the 20 some years prior to that of my life were influential in their own ways. And we can't cut that out as to what we've changed to now. So, you know, we're going through this, and I had been working, I think that was actually when I first met Dori Martin, who you had on your podcast before. And we started to really talk and get into, you know, how else can we go about this? Because I don't want to be textbook. I think you had said that in your introduction, is about, you know, textbook for this glioblastoma, from what I was told, was an old man that, you know, gets this and doesn't have much long life left. I'm like, well, at this point, I'm 34 years old. I'm young, and I'm anxious to fight. Like, I'm anxious to do whatever it is that needed to be done to not let this be something that changed my life. And so, you know, Dori was the other part of it for me. She wasn't, you know, I knew that I had to have some part of the modern medicine world is my story in this, because, you know, there is advancements that do make sense. And, you know, though, you know, we lived this clean lifestyle, you know, prescription drugs and things like that were always hard for us. So we had to really understand why we were taking it. But so we were going to find this balance, and, you know, Dori jumped in right away with me, and, you know, introduced me to the book by Nasha Winters, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. And that kind of started to become my destiny. And it was understanding my terrain, you know, and really, like, yes, food. And we'll get to how the diet that I changed to really went to, but looking at everything else, obviously, as I mentioned to you, these feelings I was having after this charity event and things like that, like the stress and the things that were going into my body, you know, I can't say were the reasons that caused any of these things. No one ever can say it, but my body was trying to tell me something. And it was really trying to show me that there was something needed to be stopped. I don't know if I needed this to be the halt in my face to make me to change my ways completely, but it was definitely an eye-opening experience. So working with Dori, we decided that, you know, from her experience of I believe it was her husband that went through a journey of similarity to mine, is that the ketogenic diet has some benefits to that. And I, you know, of course, of all things, I'm sitting there, and I, you know, from Wisconsin, I said, I can do any sort of diet as long as you don't take cheese away from me, because, you know, that's just a staple in my life now. You know, sugar was probably something I did have a fair amount of, but it wasn't everything. I didn't, you know, fill every one of my meals with sugar. I didn't necessarily crave it that often, but it was still, yeah, obviously being consumed in different ways that I didn't realize at the same time too. So, but yeah, so I jumped in to keto with her guide and some of the just different recipes from, I think it was Dr. Berg, or I can't remember exactly of the recipes. And we still use his mozzarella stick recipe all the time with pork rinds. So again, there's my cheese I had to get in. But it was certainly something that I'm like, I have to do this. Like, it was not, to me, it was I have to try everything. I have to try everything I can to fight whatever is going on in my body that decided to show its face, that we were going to knock it down. So I'm like, I'm in, and I kind of go in full force whenever any of that kind of stuff starts. So I really, again, really just didn't believe that this is what was happening to me. I didn't believe that that it actually existed in my body, but I was going to fight it in any way possible. And that then jumped into keto that way. And again, I can do a quick jump forward to where I am today. And it's like, I have never felt better. And I think that's something I want to just put out there, is like my body, my mental status or my mental state and things like that. I am so proud of where these things have gone. And there's so many levers that, have had to go through in the story to get me to here. But at the same time, there's just some of them that make the most sense. And I have to say that the food that I put in my body and the diet that we did, it has to be one of those biggest impacts into what that feeling is today. But back to my journey a little bit as I digressed, is that, so we got through my radiation and chemo treatments, oral chemo that I was taking while in North Carolina. We returned home shortly before Christmas in 23. Got home, tried to do as much of a traditional Christmas as we could in that short period. But I then had to return to Duke for my first post-treatment scans in January. And my wife and I went down there, and, we had the MRI, and then of course have to wait for the meeting with our oncology team to sit down and actually review those. And honestly, at that point, I had no expectations of what he was going to tell me after that. I just, knew that this is kind of the route I had to go, and we were going to go through these processes, all while fueling the things in the background for me. And I got there, and he comes out and he shows us, and it was actually, I believe, the PA that was showing us first. And she showed us the scans, and she said, well, this is where your tumor was. And I'm like, what do you mean where my tumor was? Like they told me with glioblastoma, like it digs in so deep into the brain that even with surgery, like there's just no way to get it all. Like it just because of the claws that it does and goes into your brain. And so she said, well, this is where it was. And I'm like, well, and she goes, well, there's nothing there anymore. And I'm like, okay, we're just like, is this true? Like, can this happen? She goes, well, what this means is that at this point, there's no progression of disease. The radiation and the chemo have, helped in the ways that it needs to kind of sustain you where you are. And she goes, we're going to continue to monitor you for I think it was every 4 weeks the first year with scans. And that's the only way they can see the difference. And I'm like, and I literally can remember telling my doctor, I'm like, what do I tell people when they ask me? Because, that's like the weirdest thing to say. Like, there's been this huge, understanding that I'm in this cancer journey and it's stage 4 and my prognosis is not great and all of these things, but now I have nothing. And he said, well, you can't tell them you're cured. He goes, but you can tell them you're on your way. And I'm like, I'll take it. I'll take it as a win, and I will live by that, and just keep, now maintaining, and the way that I would say it now is maintaining the lifestyle that I'm going to create around this, so that there's no reason for it to come back. And that's really, what then the next some years I did have to take oral maintenance chemo, as they called it, for an entire year after that, which was probably worse than anything in all of it. But at the same time, what was so beneficial to me at that point is being on the keto diet at that point is there was more of a stringent book you could follow as to what you should eat under keto, which then just forced me to eat. So even if I didn't have an appetite because of being on this oral drug that was wreaking havoc on my stomach, I knew that I knew I had to eat certain things, so I just ate them. And I have to say, just forcing myself to eat is really what got me through that. And now I, look at, the whole reasons for keto, and I'm telling others that I'm eating a keto diet, and they're like, well, you don't need to lose weight. And I'm like, understood. I'm doing it for different reasons, different benefits. And, looking back on it right now, I could tell you, I can see why the diet would help people that are trying to lose weight. Again, I am a relatively skinny guy, if you want to say it, or slim guy. And so, I didn't have much weight to lose, if that's what it was in a diet for that. But what I could see is like the leanness that came from it, or just like the ability for myself when I do exercise to see muscle tone come faster and things like that. And so I'm like, I can see how those benefits of that would work, but that wasn't why I was doing it. So of course I had to tell people differently as to why I was eating in the way that I did. But my biggest push was to say that, like, in everything that I read, and you can read so much out there, of course, there's just, it can, and I stopped, of course, Googling my own prognosis, my own diagnosis, because it's, I don't need those stories. Of course, they don't share the good ones first. But the idea that, limiting what sugar could do in whatever form it comes into of my food, in having that be like the breeding ground for cancer. It was something I read somewhere along the lines, is that sugar really could just, especially in someone's body where these cells did exist already, you don't want to set it up for anything bad. So that's why it made total sense for me to go into a ketogenic diet. And I was really stringent, for the what I would call stringent and what it needs to be for the first, 6 to 12 months of my journey after that. And then I just started to realize, of course, what my body craved most. And I know that's always a hard thing to tell people, like, you got to listen to your body, is kind of what I would tell them. And when I listened to it, I craved things differently. Like, it was very quickly that, like, any sort of sugar craving went away. Like that, like, even to this day, like on your birthday and things like that, they always say, have your cheat day, do whatever. I don't want it. Like, there's no desire for me to jump into a sugary treat or things like that. You find new reasons to crave something. And, I love the I think bulletproof coffee, as you want to call it. And I love my butter in my coffee and a dash of cinnamon. Like, there's just so many fun ways you can do food differently, and your body just starts to crave those things then. And and again, now it's benefiting me in other ways. So yeah, that's probably the journey to up until like the first good thing. I've now, that's January, that would be January of 24. So we're 2 years since that first scan that showed there was nothing more than I guess you'd say a hole in my head from where things were removed. But it was, I've continued to have scans that show no sign of disease progression. And I continue to just really live this clean lifestyle that, fueling my body with as much as I can. I worked full-time-ish through the whole thing. Of course, my employer was really, really wonderful in letting me do what I needed to do and things like that. But there's all new challenges as time goes on now. And I, continue to travel for work every once in a while. Like, okay, now we're out and about. How do I eat the right way? And then, I've done so much to just like give myself grace at the same time, and being like, everywhere you go, you can order something that's at least close to what you want your diet to be. And I'm just happy that I do that. Of course, you have your own kind of snacks in your bags now. I'm assuming anyone, that's really diving into a ketogenic diet realizes that it's, your chopsticks in my world are your biggest candy to pull out of your backpack at any given time. So there's ways to do it, and there's challenges, but I'm again, my circumstances maybe made it easier for me to, I guess, force myself into doing these things, because, I wanted that reason to keep going. But at the same time, it's been just really good to have this basis in my life of how to fuel my body in the way to keep going. So, but again, yeah, 2 years since my scans continue to be clear, and I'm just super thankful to be here sharing that with you. So.
What a joyful story. I mean, I get that was a horrible time, and you're getting this diagnosis and then a prognosis, and it's kind of grim, and yet you kept your wits about you, I guess. Okay, well, no, let's go. What can we do? And then to have the thought process that there could be more that I can do than just what the doctors are telling me, the traditional treatments.
Yes.
So I want to go into that a little bit, because yes, we talk about diet, but you said terrain. You were doing
Yeah.
stuff for your entire terrain, and I know that that's a
Yeah.
word that Dr. Winters uses in her book. And so, can you explain? Well, actually, I want to back up before you do that. Can you just kind of explain that type, the
Yeah.
glioblastoma? What type?
Yep.
Can you explain that, and then afterwards, then go into what that whole, like the whole thing, everything that you did for your lifestyle to help support your treatments.
Absolutely. So, so glioblastoma, I have glioblastoma, stage 4. So, again, the blastomas of the world are kind of crazy. And I'm still not an expert on this. Like I think I said, I stopped Googling it because I didn't want to know more than what it was. But, so it is a pretty aggressive cancer. Again, as I said, the actual cancer typically roots itself pretty deep into the brain. So which makes it a really difficult thing from, the treatment approaches to get rid of completely. Because, radiation, again, when you're putting radiation on the brain, it's more concerning of what else it could be hitting. Because again, it's being so pinpointed, so direct into trying to find this integrated cancer cells into your brain, that you want, from my understanding, just really be gentle there, because you could have more effects after the fact that are from having that radiation. But yeah, so it's a really aggressive form of cancer. The prognosis is typically not good. Again, it falls from a general population, of which I knew I was not going to be. An older demographic is who you see getting it more. Again, then the treatment approaches to it then tend to be pretty textbook, because not to say that someone that's in an older age shouldn't be fighting for their life as long as they can, but it's not looked at as something that we need to figure out necessarily, because their time was already numbers, or whatever you wanted to say. And so that changed it. So I knew I had to look at this disease in a different way for myself, because I wasn't going to fall into the, you do this, this, and this, and then that's all we can do. I wasn't going to settle for that's all we can do. And I knew, again, taking control of myself more. So to be honest with you, when I was given the first prognosis, there was, when they sent in the cells to different labs, they were looking for a different design in the cells that would have actually either helped or hurt my prognosis. And again, I'm not completely familiar in the world of a doctor like that, but unfortunately, when mine came back, it actually hurt my prognosis, so they reduced it even more. And I am just like, come on. It was like, one of those, just like, don't tell me the number, I don't need it to it. But I mean, we're talking like less than a year was pretty much what I was told. And when you look at that and you take that in, you can go so many ways with how you digest that information. And I know, like, again, for those around me, they all just tried to be strong. They all tried to like show face, but I know they actually suffered with that more than I did. And again, I truly do believe that I never believed I had it. And I don't know how to say that in any other way other than I kind of just was like, no, I'm just going to keep doing me in the, let's tweak things around me to do it to the best I can. And my body is going to do this for me. Like it's going to respond to me in different ways now, and it's going to help me fight this. And, again, I can't say what exactly in all the things that I've done. And I'll explain, some of the other things outside of just my diet that I've changed. But what is the biggest lever that helped me get to where I am today? Because I am already defied my odds, I guess you could say. But people that I work with, family, things like that, they all say, like, you will be in a textbook someday, but for good reasons. Because I always say I'm not textbook to this, but I will be in a textbook someday for good reason. And I hope that's true. And I do believe that, I hope my journey can help more and continue to go in the way it is. But I did come back to, Nasha's terrain, and at the same time, Dori was extremely helpful to me in identifying the other things that, what in your body, what made your body change? What made your body do this? What made your body, develop these cells in a way that you can control or that you can change? And that's, when I went back to having those feelings of brain fog and the coordination things and just losing my creative problem solving skills. I'm like, I was very much so approaching burnout in my job and in the way I did life. We had young kids. I was doing really well in my career path, and I'm super thankful for where all that's gone and still continues to take me. But I was doing it wrong on myself. I was putting so much pressure on myself to do things 100% of the day and just go, and never slowing down. And I'm like, how do I rein myself back in? What are the things that I can do to just pull my body to slow down and realize that there's more to life than trying to check every box and every list every day. And so I did a number of things. Like, I had to dump things out of my brain to stop my brain. Sleep. I was good at sleep, but I never told myself that I needed it. So, I would fall asleep really good, but I would wake up in the middle of the night sometime, and then my brain starts going and I don't get sleep. So, finding ways to unload my brain before bed, and then continuing to that into the next day of setting myself up in the best way possible. So I journal. It's the craziest thing to say sometimes, but it's actually sitting next to me right now. But I would just unload my thoughts, unload my feelings, into that, and then just obviously help myself approach it in a different way. Not necessarily something in like the terrain that Nasha Winters explains, but like the community piece to me was huge as well. And, I leaned into my faith. I leaned into the community that surrounded me in my faith, as well as I leaned into just the people around me that really were cheering me on in the right way. Again, of course, you get a diagnosis like this, you feel like you're the subject in the room all the time. But I worked my way around to just be normal, to find laughter, because laughter was so important to me. Like I would have said growing up, I was generally the one always smiling, the one with, the light spirit and things like that. But I felt that changing prior to this. Like I think the stress was pushing in onto me, and I was, I'd show face, I'd smile, I'd do those things, but I was definitely just having all the feelings of, I guess now, burnout. It felt just like I wasn't good for anyone. Not that I wasn't good for anyone, but I wasn't able to achieve, all the things that I thought I needed to achieve on my list to help everyone around me. So I really settled into that. And then again, really leaning into the clean side of my diet, the clean side of my life. And I'd taken care of the detox load from my body as well. I mean, we, again, living the lifestyle we did, having to have radiation, having to take this, oral chemo and some of the other drugs that help with the nausea and things like that after that. Like, again, now I again, totally opposite of how I used to live our life of not taking prescriptions unless necessary and things like that. This is all in my body, and it's changing my gut health. It's changing, everything. So now I had to have a switch and focus on a detox load to my life. And my wife's amazing and digs in deeply to all of these things and helps me through it. But I mean, we, even recently we purchased an infrared sauna, and just like the sweat of getting that out and all of those things that just allowed me to like remember to feel myself and remember to take care of myself and all the things that surround me is kind of how I reset that terrain again. So the mind to me was the biggest one, adding community, and then obviously the big focus into what my diet looked like each and every day. I made the choice to stop drinking alcohol. Not that I overconsumed it or things like that, but it, again, there's, in some of the wines and things we drink, there's sugar in it. And there's, again, there's just how it goes to the diet. Like, I didn't need that. I didn't need any different chemical in my body to affect any sort of cell growth in a bad way. So I just decided that was the right, and I don't regret it. Of course, there's moments that it'd be nice to have a glass of wine with a nice dinner and things like that. But at the same time, it's not something I have to do. So, but yeah.
It's amazing how that, that switch happens, and it's like, well, we were taught to celebrate in these ways, but we no longer need to do that. I
Right.
can like you're celebrating every single day, I would imagine. Like this is
Oh,
amazing. Like,
absolutely.
yeah, wake up every day and just start celebrating. It doesn't need to involve a glass of wine. So, you talked about finding the team that was around you, and you were fortunate to get a doctor who, best, like one of the best in his field, if
Yeah.
not the best. How did you communicate with him that you were supporting in this way, or like was that doctor aware? Did they say anything about it, or how did
Well,
that
yeah,
go?
that's a great question, because even to this day, it's interesting, of how I see their thoughts going when I do speak in the way that I do about my body. But one thing at the same time is, before I answer exactly what their thoughts were, is that is one of the cornerstones that I told myself. It's like, I'm going to do this my way, and I'm going to utilize my team, my fantasy team that I was building, in the ways that their expertise helped me. And so, yes, when I was working with the team in Duke, I quickly learned what to and to not include in what I was saying. And I'm like, the ketogenic diet, specifically, was one thing that they weren't like, oh yes, 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 do that. But they weren't like, don't do that. Like, of course, in the early beginnings, when, things are more stressful and they're like, just eat whatever you can eat, just eat, like that's what you needed to do. But the more that I kept telling them that I was eating this ketogenic diet and staying really heavy in my proteins and healthy fats and all of that, they started to listen to me a little bit more, because they also were seeing that I was doing so good. And it's kind of, I feel like they're going to jump on the bandwagon a little too late sometimes, but at the same time, they were positive about it. And some of them more than others, like, again, some with a little bit more old school practices on there were a little bit didn't even look at it. It was just kind of a note that was in my record. But others are asking me, like, you still on the ketogenic diet? Are you still, doing these things? And those were the ones where I'm like, then down the line, one of them did bring up to me, that they're actually following some studies on someone doing the ketogenic diet and how it's affecting cancer patients or things like that. And they didn't go into too much detail, because it's, of course, now a balance of, I don't want to tell you something that's in a study phase, or, that's really going to do anything. But they were still always just curious how I was doing, and, watching my growth in that. So that, yes, they were supportive. They were supportive in the diet piece of it. But looking at, again, I was taking some different supplements to help me with the detoxifications of my body and things like that. And there were some conversations around just different alternative treatments that I was going to look at in conjunction with the radiation and chemo that I was going into, just to kind of, help reduce inflammations and just different things that helped equip the body in the better way. And those were the ones where they started to kind of, look at, what I was saying in a little bit way, like, oh, we're going to now have to talk to the pharmaceutical person that would, or the drug person, to make sure that nothing is conflicting, and which I appreciated. I don't want side effects that weren't going to be things like that. But at the same time, like, I knew that a lot of these things were coming from a natural world. And, it was not something that I don't think that was going to really affect in the way that it did. So you started to kind of, find a balance of, what it was. But then at the same time, taking the concerns I was hearing from that team back to someone like Dori, and just being like, Dori, what's your thoughts here? Like, where should we go in really, the functional medicine side of things? Like, is there a balance? Is there things that I should? And she was obviously always really great about that. And she was not a huge supplemental load person with me either. It was just what made sense and what where it went. And, that's where I, started to learn I'd learned different things. Like, again, I take an organ synergy every day, or an organ supplement every day. And it's because there's brain in it. And brain likes to eat brain. That's where my concern is. Like, let's fuel the brain with that organ. And so, but I know if I told Duke that, they'd kind of look at me like, what? And I'm like, but at the same time, I knew that I was going to have this a little bit of, questioning or just different looks at me when I said those things. But I just went with what my body told me was right. And that, I think that's the biggest thing some people forget in any sort of medical journey is that you have your choice to do things your own way. And I think we all get so easily scared by following the procedure of what we should have to do to treat things. And and it's okay to question your medical doctors. Like, are we sure we're looking at this the right way? Like, ask for a second opinion. I mean, I still had to balance my local oncology team here to where I was with the one in Duke, because again, you needed someone close by, but they both had very different perspectives and very different approaches. And I used them for what I needed them for, I guess, in my journey. And I wasn't afraid of that. And so I also was, as I got through finishing, that oral chemo round, I was on no prescriptions. And I think that's the craziest thing is you go and they're like, okay, let's review your prescriptions. I'm like, I don't have any. Like, why? My body feels great. Like, why would we put anything more into me? And, it's, again, that's where it was showing that I was not a typical person in their world. And I think, as it goes on, and obviously the success and that I'm feeling right now. And, again, I don't know my journey the next however many years and things that it looks like. But at the same time, like, all I know right now is that my body feels great and it's telling me it's doing good. I'm going to keep fueling it the way that I'm doing it. And let's keep going. And let's share a story like this with you today, Robyn, so that I can, make sure other people just keep trying everything that they can. So.
And I appreciate that you're sharing this story, because it's really, like I told you before we started recording, you're kind of filling this bucket for me where I've just been getting in contact a little bit more and more with people who think that just changing their diet, they're never going to have any problems again because the diet solves everything. But here you are, young in your mid 30s with this diagnosis, and we can't prove that this terrain and your terrain system helped you through that process, but you're also telling me that you're an anomaly in the world of the cancer center. So
yes,
that's right. That, like,
it's an interesting thought to think about, right? Yeah, no, again, we can look at all of these different things, but what can be the biggest lever in my success? And I don't know what that is, to be honest with you, but I can say that, like, the biggest changes I've made in my life is the diet. And so, like, it has to play a part of it. And certainly the changing the way that I approach stress and things like that is again, a mind thing when it comes to the brain too. But again, you have to pull all the levers you can in a journey. And maybe it isn't everything, but it is certainly something that shouldn't be ignored. So.
I completely agree. It's more, it's a wide range of things that you can do to better your lifestyle. So you can be eating a strict keto diet and testing everything and making sure you stay at this level of ketosis. But if you're stressed out all the time and you're running and gunning all the time, something may still get you. Or, I started this way of eating when I turned 40. So I have 40 years of stuff that I could have done to myself. And that, I don't know what's going to pop up. I also don't know what I've possibly prevented. And we can't know the answer to those questions, but we can just carry on and hope for the best. But I believe that this is the story here, is that there are things you can do to be very supportive.
That's a great way.
When things happen. So perhaps just the way that drug responded in your body responded better because of the way you were handling the rest of your terrain. And that may be why it was a shorter duration of needing it. And, like, these are questions that are out there that may or may not be answered, but they're certainly things that you can try. And I really liked that you said that, you have a choice in this. I know when you get a diagnosis, things start just moving fast and you get information from all these different doctors, and you got to take this medicine and you got to take this medicine to counter the effects from that medicine. But you're allowed to take a breath and say, what do I need to do for me?
Yes.
And you get a say in what your treatment is.
Yes. It's hard to take that breath though. I will be honest in that. And again, as you said, all of a sudden everyone around you has become experts in it, or they're sending you a link to something they found that, oh, this person did this and it worked, or this person. And I'm like, okay, let's again. And that's where I had to like, just listen to what my body was telling me in response to what I was doing with it. And again, the recognition of that, or what was maybe poorly fueling my body, was probably the hardest part, is to realize, no, you're right. Like, I'm not stressed. I say that all the time. And I still say it, I'm not stressed, but I manage my stress in a different way, is a better way to say it now. And so, you do taking that breath and like realizing those things of how to respond and how to control it are tricky. And again, that's where, building that team and like just people like, having these conversations right now, Robyn, or again, I bring Dori Martin up all the time, but she did a really great job. And I don't even speak to Dori as regularly now as I did in the beginning, but she helped me like slow down. She helped me think of those things. She gave me all kinds of options to watch and try. And not every one of them worked for me. Not every one of them was exactly it, but the ones that did worked for a reason, because like either my body craved it, I couldn't make it work in my lifestyle, or what it was. And one thing that I just dawned on me as we're talking, and it's so tricky in the world to think of, is that I was listening to a speaker not too long ago, and I'm not going to quote him or say exactly what it was because I don't remember, but he said something along the lines with, when it comes to your health and all of these different advancements in more of a functional side of medicine approach, and just with electrical charges and infrareds and all of the things of healing our body in different ways, they're not mainstream, so they're not insurance based, they're not things like that. And it's really hard. The hard part for me to hear in all of that is that you almost have to, you have to be at a certain level of financial stability to be able to do all those things. And I hope that's what changes in our world, is that, they're realizing more and more that these things are helpful in our world, or just different approaches to things really do affect things. We have to make a way to make this affordable or out there for everyone. And I think that's maybe one of, the switches in my head lately, is a goal of like making sure that, again, at least just saying diet everyone can afford in certain ways. Again, we're talking, the basis in keto for the most part is going back to nature, like, eating the easy things, the things that you can grow in your backyard or hunt in your local area, whatever it may be. And that those are the best things for you. And that's the switch that I'm hoping happens in the world sooner. It's just that it shouldn't be hard to do things that way, or find those foods, or things like that. That should just be what was there. We messed the system up somewhere along the lines, that it's easier to get the bad stuff than it is to get the good stuff that requires little to no energy other than just picking it out of your garden. So Robyn, can you help me change the world and making sure that that's out there? So
hey, that's the plan. Let's change the world. Let's do it. I'm game. So, well, you had mentioned that, there's studies out there. Like, I think it's interesting that you're at Duke, because Dr. Eric Westman's there with his whole like keto clinic that he has going on, and then but
they're not connecting.
But they're not, not this. I know. I actually lived in South Carolina for 10 years, and friends of mine were actually going to Duke for treatment, and the whole time I was like, just do keto, but that was never placed in front of them as an option. It's just funny how that communication isn't there, but studies are happening. Have you ever been approached or considered or been in a study?
No, I was in asked for a study at Duke shortly after, but it was more in like the after effects of chemo. So it wasn't anything related to the way I was changing my diet. And that's the thing that like I some of the things that I read out there in different studies and how keto can improve, or I know there's the book of Keto Kills Cancer and all of these things. And when you say that out loud, it's like, oh, that's a heavy word to say, like keto kills cancer. But at the same time, these studies were always being done on like new patients, like not someone that's in it, or like you almost have to have your basis line or whatever, the beginning of someone who's in a totally bad state. And I think I was a little trickier in that, because again, didn't eat keto prior, but I ate so clean and so, you know, in a different way already, that it maybe wasn't the best, you know, for some of those studies. But I wish there's my cue. I'm open for a study if anyone wants to.
Okay,
To
if
find me.
anybody's listening that wants to do a case series on Klay, he's right here. He's ready. He's willing. Get up with me if you want to get in touch with him. So, I mean, and for myself, in my position, I've actually been able to be in a couple of studies like that, where they're, you know, you go back and you kind of tell the story and then they pull the information from that. So there's a lot of usefulness to that, because even if it's not like a, you know, double blinded, you know, these stories, it starts with the stories, and that's where the questions start getting asked, and it just gets bigger and bigger from there. So being one of those baseline people to bring that to attention, it's an important piece that, you know, so there's the call. Anybody out there,
please.
Putting it out into the world. Sometimes that helps to put that kind of stuff out there into the world. So let's go to now in our last few minutes together. Let's go to now. You've had your scans. There's no progression. There's there's a hole in your head where it used to be.
Yes.
But do you have any of those symptoms that you used to experience?
So it's interesting. So so now at this point in my, you know, modern medicine journey of, you know, glioblastoma, I have to have scans every 12 weeks now. So again, every year your time frame between them gets reduced in risk. So I had one in early December, which again still showed no sign of disease progression, which amazing. Again, those are always the fun part in this too, is, you know, the 5 weeks after your scan, you feel great because you have this answer that there's nothing there. And then it's, you know, you're 2 weeks away from your next one and you start to be like, oh, did I just feel something? Did I, you know, it was something different. And, you know, the one they always laughed at me for is, you know, I had a headache on, you know, the 3rd week since my last scan. And like, you know, people have headaches. Like, it's okay. And it was always, you know, my doctor looks at me like, don't worry, normal people have headaches too. So it was, again, that's, you know, again, going great. They always said to me, like, some of, you know, when they did remove the tumor from my brain, again, when surgeons are good, but they're not all like, they can't be so, you know, perfect, that they may get some good brain cells with it, which is what was obviously being hurt when that tumor was growing, which gave me the left side things that were going on, and the coordination issues and just the brain fog feelings and things like that. And they said, can't say that they're going to regrow, like that's not exactly it, but you know, you can retrain your brain to be able to repick those up in different ways. So I certainly, right after, you know, all of this, I struggled with stairs, because I guess I realized I lead with my left foot when I go up the stairs. I didn't know that, but of course it didn't know to go. So over time, like now I've just adapted. So I would say at this point in time, I don't feel, other than some random sensations in my left side, I feel completely normal. I function normal. I mean, I live day-to-day life just as I did probably before that. To be honest, I live it better. I have truly, like, the, you know, I feel so good. And I say that to so many people when they're, you know, I've been introduced to other people that have been given my diagnosis, and just, you know, what did you do? And, you know, sharing my story with them to see if it can help them. And I always tell them, like, when I say that I feel better today than I did before that, I'm not joking. Like, my body feels stronger. My mental psyche feels better. And like, again, that's where I would say the lever is my diet, because I say everything happens through your gut. And I truly believe that is the food that we're fueling ourselves with is what really sets us up to the next part of it. But I'm in a great position. I don't know if they ever get to tell you that you're cured of it. It's just this weird thing. But I think they say after 5 years, you can maybe say it or you're in remission. But at the same time, having never believed I had it, I don't care when they tell me I don't have it again either. So
one of the good brain cells that it was pushing up against and they cut out was the one that made you believe that you had it. So
that's it. I hope that's what they took.
They took that one out. So
you're
good. You're totally good there. It'll never come back. So.
Perfect. I like that. Perfect. So, but I feel great. So.
Yeah, and for those of you listening, I'm looking at a young 30-something-year-old guy who, when we clicked on our call, had just shoveled his driveway. So I am not looking at somebody who looks like, they got a prognosis that he's already outlived. I mean, it's just the story you're telling me and the person I'm looking at are two very, very separate things. And that's because I think a lot of the mindset piece. I mean,
Yes.
obviously you did things, but you had to have that mindset. And that does scare me sometimes when you see people in your family or friends of yours that get some sort of diagnosis, and it's like, well, now I'm going to just sit in my chair and see what happens. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's
It doesn't,
hard
but
to
they also have
watch.
to have that own motivation on their self. And
Mhm.
it's so hard to, having seen other people go through different things, that is hard for me to watch. It's like, how do you not feel this way? Or how do you not and I'm like, but again, everyone approaches things differently. But I do just know that I had to have that belief. It wasn't there. And I had to keep a positive attitude and keep going. I have three amazing little girls to live for each and every day. And early on in some of the things that I was reading on this journey is write down goals, like little goals. And one of the books that I read, write down, at this date, I'm going to do this, and then just keep going for that, and then keep setting further ones out. And I'm going to walk every one of my three girls down the aisle when they get married one day. So that's going to happen for me. And I feel good. And the support of my wife and my family and just through this has been absolutely incredible, because again, here I am, the one in the room that you probably wouldn't know I have cancer unless I just shared this story like I did today, but yet everyone around me does. And so you look at things differently. Everyone looks at differently. So, but
Yeah,
I'm so
no,
happy
that
to be where
happens.
I'm at. So, and I'm happy to be able to share the story, Robyn, with you. It's been great.
It has been, and yeah, let's not overlook the support from your wife and your family, because
Yes.
these things are happening to you or inside of you. However,
Yeah,
it does take that dream
100%.
team that you put
It
together
is. I
to.
have the most amazing fantasy team, as I call it, on mine. And there's balances of it came from modern medicine, functional medicine, family, work, community around me, and that is what's done so much for me. And I'm just glad that I have that positivity around me all the time.
Yes, that's a beautiful thing. So before we go, I do have one more kind of question. It's
Yeah.
more like yeah. So how do you see yourself and your levers, pulling your levers as you proceed in the future?
Yeah, I think at this point in time, when it comes to something like keto, and I don't know if I said this, but I I do. In the beginning, I knew I was in ketosis. I was testing myself. I was going through all of that and following it textbook, as you would say, to make sure that I was doing it, because that's what I had to do in that moment. But it has truly adapted for me, and I adapted it to knowing to feel my body in the right ways, knowing to make the right choices if I am out to eat or things like that. And that's kind of the biggest levers that I want to continue to push. I'm going to continue to feel my body in the best way that I possibly can. And that's going to be, probably sticking pretty strong to the parts of keto that make sense to me. And that's the avoiding all sugars, and, low carb intake, or to low to no carb intake, and then heavy proteins and keeping my body going that way. That's a big one. And then at the same time, that community piece is huge to me. And I'm a social person. Hopefully I coming off in that way right now, but I'd like to be surrounded by positive people, and I'm going to continue to look in that way and continue to share my story like this in a way that hopefully helps others to just there is other ways of going about it and keeping those levers going. I will have to continue scans in the way that I need to and whatnot, but that's just a part of my time. That's not anything that needs to be the biggest part of it. But those are the biggest levers, and I think I'm going to continue to pull, is keep that amazing people around me, and following my diet in a way that makes my body feel great. And obviously, adding in a little bit of movement, that was always the other big thing, especially when on chemo and having your body feel like crud from whatever it was killing in your body. But I had to move. That was the biggest thing, keeping on moving. And, that it just helps the body keep going. So hopefully that answered your question, Robyn. I
No,
look at
I mean, it
life so
does.
different sometimes that it's like I'm in the moment right now. That's hard to think about the future because I know it's going to be there.
Yes, yeah. Well, I actually am really glad I asked you that question because it's important to know that it doesn't have to be like super strict all the
Yes.
time, because then you've dumped all of that on top of your load. And if
Yeah.
you're trying to give your brain a break and trying to have a little bit of freedom and a lot less stress,
Yeah.
being stressed out over having a certain number and having to do
Right.
it
Yeah.
precisely this way, it's not going to serve. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that was the best part is that I had that basis to start with, and it allowed me to find that platform of understanding what made sense for me. And, again, I could tell the difference. And like I talked about leanness and just the way that happened. But at the same time, the brain fog that went away was crazy to me. Is like, everything looked clear, felt clear. Like I could, just, see things in a different way. And I do truly believe that's how I was feeling my body and with the diet that I was having. So yeah, you look at it in different ways. And as long as you're getting in the things that, find reward in different things. Like I said, I love my coffee. That's, where my day warms me up in the morning. So when you live in Wisconsin, that has to happen too. You
Yeah,
need
I was gonna
something
say,
to
when
warm you
you're
up.
way up north in
Yeah.
Wisconsin, then you probably need your warm cup of coffee,
Yes,
or
probably multiple
5 or
times a day,
6.
but exactly. So
Yeah, I mean, this has been an amazing conversation, and I'm sure you have so much more to share. But we've hit our hour, like boom, like that. Like it happens so fast.
when you first said to start sharing your story, I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna make it in for an hour sharing it. I'm like, I could jot it down in 2 notes, but no, it's been amazing. I truly
Ev-
love that I was able to talk out loud like this, Robyn. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. I'm so glad that you were able to come on and share all of this with us. So yeah, again, if you want to study Klay, he's available.
Here I am.
Can people, do you have a way for people to contact you?
Yeah, we absolutely can. Just my email is probably the best time to get me. I played the social media world, but at the same time I try to hide myself every once in a while too. So email is probably gonna be great to put in there.
I think that's the smartest thing that anybody can ever say, is that I don't do social media. So I will not put your email address out there. So, but what I'll say is, if anybody is interested in contacting Klay, contact
Find you.
me, and
There you
I'll
go.
get you, or contact Dori. She'll get you hooked up.
Dori will
That way
find you
your
too.
email is not all over the world. So,
Yeah.
but it's been a real pleasure having you on. I wish you continued success in this journey. And I really don't, I mean, I get the feeling that that's not going to be part of your world anymore. Like it's just like
No,
this little thing
it
that
is.
happens over here. I got to get tested. I feel like you're so in tune to your body and how it works now. Like you'll know right away should something be off. Like
Yep.
it's not going to become like a huge problem. But I also think that you're doing all of these things that are so supportive. That's not going to be your future either. And you are going to walk those 3 girls down the aisle and see your grandbabies and all of that
Oh,
stuff,
there you go.
because
You're
you've
speaking my language.
taken this time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that idea of just setting these goals and then spreading them further and further
Yep. As
out.
they come. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure you journal about those things too. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I
Absolutely.
mean, you got to keep your head in the right place. It's so
It is
easy
very
to
important.
lose hope. And
And I do
yeah,
slip up. Let's be honest. I do
yeah,
that too. But at the same time, you can reset yourself the next day. So it's great.
yeah, yeah.
So
Good point. Very good point. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me here today. Thanks everyone for listening to our keto biography. Bye.
thanks so much.